There is no doubt the world is facing daunting challenges these days. Look around. We have reached a critical point in human history. Old leadership models, beliefs, and behaviors are no longer working. Centuries of emasculation have brought us to the brink. Men need help, and who better to help us but the women? This is W.E.L.L, the Women's Expressions on Leadership, Learning, and Liberty podcast show, and I'm its host, John Krotek. My guests are accomplished and intelligent women who share not only their personal stories, but give us valuable insights and perspectives on the leadership challenges men face. In a world still dominated primarily by men, these honest perspectives can be a genuine catalyst for male leadership improvement. By exploring possibilities and opportunities for self-improvement and transformation, we offer men hope in an ever-changing, fast-paced, complex world. Thank you for listening and for your support. Lead on. I am super excited to have this guest on this episode of the W.E.L.L podcast, Women's Expressions on Leadership, Learning, and Liberty. Taking us a while to get here. I've known Tommie Flannery Baskis for a few years now. She is a very, very busy woman, and she's smart, and she does a lot of really cool things. Before we get to Tommie, I'll tell you a little bit about her, and then we'll just get right into this conversation. Tommie is the president and CMO of Synfuels Assets Management, LLC, and the vice president of Draconis Digester Technology. She's the CEO of Duskflyer Vision Art and Productions and the CEO of Angel Blue Perfume, LLC. And I wasn't joking when I said she was busy. Being CEO of one company is tough enough, but she's accomplished it, and to do it for 4 different companies speaks volumes about Tommie. By the way, my wife's name is Tommie too, and spells it the same way. I remember
that you said that. I think that's wonderful.
It's pretty interesting. But anyhow, Tommie has worked at the executive level in the wastewater industry, extraction, distillation, waste energy projects, and is a highly motivated, successful marketing executive. Synfuels creates valuable fuels, chemicals, and fatty acids for industries and the energy sector. We're hearing a lot about that stuff these days.
You sure are.
She is also, we can go in the other businesses and we can do that, but I want to tell you a little bit more about the other side of her besides the business side, but this is business too. She's also an artist, a photographer, and the published author of The Abandoned Story, which is a collection of unique stories, photographs, and history of the Midwest river towns, rural haunts, abandoned places, and things left behind. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. You can discover more about her distinctive art, writings, and photography at Duskflyer Vision Art and Productions. We'll leave all that information in the show notes when we publish this. Her passion for medicinal plants, herbs, and spices inspired Tommie to form Angel Blue Perfume, LLC. And she uses a very unique extraction process, but everything she uses, and I'm not a scientist, I don't know how to extract anything but stories. And she can tell us a little bit more about that. But I remember purchasing some perfume from her company a couple of years ago. And my wife absolutely loved it. It's not like anything that you buy off the shelf. Her heart and her soul goes into the process, and everything she uses is top notch. But let's get started. Let's welcome to the show, Tommie.
Thank you, John.
Tommie Flannery Baskis. And I just wanted to say before Tommie and I met 3.5-4 years ago. She supported the Green Zone Hero business directory. Her heart has always been with the veterans and people who wear the uniform and put their lives on the line.
And we are veteran-owned companies too, so definitely. And I wanted to say I'm honored to be here speaking with you. You bring a lot of awareness, John, to many good people doing good things, and like yourself. So thank you.
Well, the show's about you, though, but thank you for that. I appreciate that.
That's true, though. But you interview so many wonderful guests, and I've enjoyed listening to many of them. So you do very good work, John.
Thank you for that. Well, let's get started, Tommie. We'll talk a little bit about the logo that you see on the screen in a minute, but let's go back. Let's go back to the very beginning. Let's go back to your upbringing? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, let's see. I had I think a very, very good upbringing. Had quite a bit of sadness in my life too. My mother passed away when I was 6, and my father had a lot of responsibility raising my brother and myself. And my dad remarried to a wonderful lady who I also call my mother, who offered much support to us. So I think to make sort of this long story short, had a large family, German, Irish descent, very loving, gregarious people, very good people. And I grew up in a nice Indiana neighborhood, but lived very close to my grandparents and spent a lot of time in a historic home in Jeffersonville, Indiana, by the big Jeff Boat Works. That's a very large boat work facility that builds large boats and vessels. And it was quite an experience. So I think that helped to form my opinions early in life on humanity, because I spent a lot of time with my grandmother and my grandfather, who, had a lot of great wisdom. And all the things within this historic home that were around really helped to kind of form my stories and the way I would see life. So I grew up around them a lot, and I really loved and found out, John, that speaking with older people and spending time with them was incredible. It was like I learned so many things from their stories that were so important. And I realized that even my parents, who I love very much, my aunts and uncles, they had great stories too, but it seemed like the older generation had these incredible stories. So I thought, wow, these are important, because when they pass on, we're not going to have those stories anymore unless you record these things. And I think that influenced, if you read my writings, a lot of what I do now today. And that was a lot of my childhood. I went to a Catholic school for many years. So I feel like I was brought up in a very respectful, loving, environment, even though I had a lot of these sad type of things that happened. But I grew up pretty fast, and I was, older than my brother. So I did help kind of hold down and take care of the household while my mother worked several jobs in the evening, and my father too. So there's so many stories, John, I could go into.
No, but that's pretty cool.
Into a nutshell, I really did spend a lot of time with my grandmother and my grandfather, and I watched a lot. I was very aware of things, and I really tried to see what the older generation did and the stories that they would impart upon me. I thought their wisdom was very interesting, and it was something that I wasn't really getting from the peers of my age group. And I was really thirsty for knowledge and experience. And I really found that to be fascinating, to go visit and spend time with older people. I used to even visit nursing homes,
No, but that's,
people that have families, and I would visit them because they were lonely, but you can learn so much.
You're what we would have called, an old soul, your fascination with history.
Yes, my godmother always said that to me growing up. She's like, Tommie, you're an old soul, but I'm a lot like my mother. My mother was very aware and was also published. She published works. She was a really, really good artist and seemed really beyond her time. So maybe I got a little bit of that from my mother,
One of the things you mentioned, Tommie, which is kind of cool, is that, you mentioned that your peers didn't seem really interested in some of those things that you were interested in. As an old soul child, I guess you would say.
Right.
and that's what probably comes out in your writings and
yes.
And just the way you approach life, you approach life with the maturity that other kids probably at that time and maybe even today still don't have.
Right. Well, when you lose someone important to you, you grow up fast. You start, that's why I always write from, I have one foot here and one beyond the veil. So it really, when death happens early for a child, it colors your existence, your life, your perspective. And a lot of children, they came from all different backgrounds, of course, and had their own experiences, but most of them had their families intact. You know, the mother and father were alive. They didn't suffer that traumatic experience of losing someone that they loved and looked up to. So, you know, that's quite traumatic for a child. So I think I had to really look elsewhere for things, and was always searching, you know, why are
Let me
these
think.
going
Let me
on?
think here for a second. So the influences, you know, your grandfather who was older, and then the Catholic Church, and then you're the older sister to a brother, and then
Right,
your dad had these extra responsibilities. You know, tell
right.
us a little bit, being around that, your brother and your dad and your grandfather.
And
Tell
my
us a little,
grandmother, she really colored my
yeah.
life.
And but how did you, what did you learn about boys, and what did you learn about guys? What were your perceptions of that at those formative years?
Um, you know, it's funny, the collected knowledge we have and the way time, which is such an interesting phenomena. We're like grown children is the way I think of things. We just have this a lot of collected experience that makes us, with our unique DNA, who we are today. So a lot of, and my point is, a lot of the way I saw things as a child, I see that now too. I'm very good at giving someone, you know, making up for what they may lack, giving people chances, things like that. But I think that I grew up having a very healthy respect for men and women, and seeing that they are very, very similar, and but being very unique individuals and working very well together. Um, so I think I had a very healthy outlook to them, but I was not probably the most social child, but very loving and very friendly. And I think I attracted many good people into my life. But you know, I was an attractive young lady, so I felt like I had older men who were attracted to me, but they were very respectful. And I don't know. I think I had a very good image of men and women. Not
And
necessarily naive, but I guess I had a respect for people, and was treated with respect. I think I'm very fortunate growing up through those formative years that I had many good influences around me, is what I'm trying to say, because I am very well aware of how people can be when they're not being noble, or you know, you're choosing not maybe a good side to better yourself as a man or a woman, to be disciplined, to choose a noble road. And I think people have become very lazy and not concerned with trying to be the best that they can be in this day and age. I see kind of a lack of respect for maybe humanity. People are more self-serving. I see youth with, you know, maybe not being as respectful as what we were taught to be growing up. But I think, you know, this is a hard conversation, John, because it gets into someone being very, you know, you have to be an aware person, and you have to be very open to see things. And I think some people become very afraid and closed off, so they don't. And they don't try to become a better version of themselves. They're used to being more herded into a certain narrative or acting a certain way because they're kind of told to do so, instead of realizing your own experience and story is very, very important, and
well,
very powerful.
if we look around the world today, we can see that, you know, and it is astute. You know, you keep
Right,
coming back to this word, which I absolutely love. It's part of the mantra in my core value set, is the word respect. And
right.
you mentioned it, you know, in a couple of different ways, but I couldn't agree with you more, Tommie, that, you know, if you have this healthy vision or perception and respect, you
Mhm.
said you always seem to attract respectful people. And
Right.
that's a very interesting point.
You have to respect yourself and know those boundaries, because if
Yeah.
you don't, people will, they're going to be people that test you. And you know this. I mean, you know, by the time you're our age, you realize There are different types of people, and many people can be very self-serving in the businesses like that we run. And I'm not really trying to be judgmental. It's just that I try to live by a code of, I always expected men in my life to be like my uncles or my father or my grandparents. You know, I had 3 sets of grandparents. So, you know, I see the men and women in my life as being very strong and more noble and really trying to better themselves. And then you grow up and you realize in business, you kind of wonder, where did that go? They don't even have a respect for themselves. You're wondering if, you know, how is this? You know, I believe in integrity, being the best you can be, and having really good communication skills to speak what you need to speak. But it's the lack of integrity that keeps people from not communicating, because this is a lot more simple, you know, really, you understand that. I mean, in business, or in any type of relationship, if you don't have communication and integrity and want to be the best noble person that you can be, you're going to have a breakdown eventually. You know, things are not going to work out well between you and that other entity in some fashion. And life would be a lot easier if people did have some kind of respect, a little bit more respect for themselves and others. And
You know,
I think something that I'm seeing that is not, it doesn't look healthy. It's not happening now. And I've been very disappointed. And I've known many wonderful people in my life, that many people take an easy road that's not courageous, and they just don't want to be honest with themselves and others. And
you know, I wrote this morning that technologies have changed. We'll talk a little bit about technology.
yes,
I said, but the human organism doesn't seem to have changed or evolved that much.
exactly.
In general, of course, without being judgmental or you know, it's more rhetorical, but it's true. And it's a shame, because if you have these core value sets,
Right.
or if you try to find them and apply them, your life could literally change in an instant.
I know.
And isn't it sad, Tommie? But we see so many people. Well, we see people fighting vulnerability. We see people fighting themselves. And when you get right down to it, I said the optimal mantra, I think, that serves the world these days is fear.
Yes.
Fear of whatever, but the fear is destroying communication.
It is a huge driver in all of that. And oh wow, we could go into so much of this. I think you know, the technology is incredible, and what we use it for now is wonderful, but and artificial intelligence and on. But like I said, that's a longer conversation. But I think we need to be very cognizant of not losing that human factor of actually, you know, having that respect and meeting with person, and not put forth, which I think is easy to do. I'm not trying to be judgmental, but put forth a false identity to people on a social platform, where behind the scenes you're like another person at home, but you're putting forth something false for people to see on a social media platform. And that's the duality problem I think we do see. It's a lack of integrity and courage. Anyone can put on a smiling face or try to look good and put on a different persona and talk all day long about great things. But are you really applying that in your life? And I think that's the funny thing about the AI and the social media. I think there are a lot of false type of representations. So I think people need to go within themselves and ask them, is this really, you know, what am I putting forth? I don't have to just put forth something every day of my life, every minute of the day. What I'm doing, is what I'm putting forth important? Does it help someone? Is it helping myself and others? And am I giving a good representation of what's truthful? I'm kind of concerned that's not happening, and it's cold. You know, I think people need to respect their, you know, the people in their communities and get on with people, not just communicate by social media.
I couldn't agree.
That's kind of another story. I just think
but it's true. You know, I couldn't agree.
To what we're speaking of,
I
definitely.
couldn't agree with you more. Even some of the developers of these social media platforms
Uh,
have come out and spoken publicly and actually written books about it. How, what started out as something really good and enlightening, for information and technologies and being able to communicate has turned in many different places, not what it was meant to be. And
right.
that some of the entropic forces of the universe, the non-growth forces have been able to play upon that. And there is a lot of deception and there's a lot of,
Sure.
a lack of trust and, all of these things that we need to have a sustainable
Well,
society.
it's another conduit for that to happen. So it's not like it's sort of odd to talk about things as good and bad, light and dark. You can't have one without the other.
No,
But
you can't.
people
That's a
need to
fact.
become aware, though. I think there's a narrative that's put forth, and when people perhaps on a social media site see other people doing this, they get a lot of likes for this. If you're insecure, maybe, and you're only concerned about that, you may follow that narrative because you're saying, well, he or she this is working for them. I want this too. But that's not really being truthful. I think people need to take a breath, take a step back, and say, live a life. It's not about this, maybe always being connected to that
Yeah.
matrix of,
And I think we're starting to
false
see that.
information or false identity or an ego. People are drowning in ego. I use this all the time. Ego is not your amigo. People in business, anyone that I tutor, anyone that asks my opinion, that works with us, I always try to remind them of that. It's a very difficult thing to come to terms with, but ego is definitely something that people need to deal with. It gets in the way of true relationships, and it doesn't do any justice to yourself if you're trying to be the most noble, person that you can be, because we're always evolving every minute, every day, like you said, and you can change at any moment. It's just like taking a hat off and putting on another hat of awareness. It's nothing to be ashamed of. And I think people just need to, they need to do what makes them happy, what the creative nature and your unique story. People need to do that more and get in touch with that more. I think
That's true.
get lost in a lot of these things that maybe don't, when I'm talking about social media.
Well, I read the other day where, human beings, one of the commonalities of human beings, whether they want to admit it or not, is the search for acceptance and approval that we're okay. And, society and social constructs has a way of, for women, it's a little bit different than it is for men, but we have these societal pressures. And
Sure.
if we feel that we're weak in any one of them, then for some reason we feel like we're not good enough,
Right.
or we're a failure, and then it gets into a whole other
That's right.
ball game. But I think that's what we see a lot of, and I personally believe I agree with you on a lot of fronts. I think that the social media platform has been good in some respects, and then in some respects
Sure.
it's
That's true.
magnified the dark side too.
Sure, and there are many good aspects to social media. There's no doubt about it, and on any level, even if it's just, I let's see. I mean, it's a good communicating tool. There's no doubt about it, and it's got a great place.
Well, we're using it to tell the story, so we're
Yeah,
going to be.
no, and there's nothing wrong with it at all. There's a great way to share information that might have been hard to do, where you can retrieve information from the past, things that might be in another part of the world. So it's wonderful technology. When I speak of social media, I'm speaking of social media side. It's not quite where you're trying to gain knowledge and learn things or do meetings or things that don't really present themselves in an easy manner to where you can just fly to another country real quick to do a meeting. It's nice that you have the opportunity to do this in the area that you live, and remotely and stuff. So I just think that a lot of, John, what's been designed in this world is basically to sort of like make humans feel that you are not fulfilled and whole as a human. Each human, if I could, I always tried to tell people like my brother, the gravity of this is that each human has their own DNA. You have your own unique story that will never happen again. you will never happen again like that. So in this time, this realm that we know of, and that is so important. And I wish people could understand the gravity of that. And we're not meant to be herd animals, to follow narratives. To me, it's not about politics. It's not about this. It's not about that. This is about something very important, that you have power. You have to me, a conduit straight to your creator. You're very, very important. Each person, whether you're a man or woman on the street, or, everybody, every man, woman, and child, everything has an awareness, animals, rocks, everything. So it's a beautiful story. And if people can just understand that they are loved, they were created, they're here for a reason, and do what makes them happy, and not just totally be self-serving. Seems like with that attitude, people that I notice are far more happy and constructive and healthy. And I think everything that's designed sometimes takes you away from that, the institutions, they make you feel like, well, you need me to do this, you need this and that. But a lot of everything does start from within, and from that core family unit, what you learn from an early age, from a healthy, loving family, and knowing that you're equipped with everything that you have inside to answer, to find those answers. And there's not one person in this planet that's not important or knows anything more than anyone else on this beautiful, mysterious journey. I mean, to me, it's like we're children in the dark, walking towards the light in this mysterious journey together. And that's all it is. There's just things that will never be answered because we weren't allowed to know. We're here, it's a beautiful time, always a beautiful life, and you need to make the best of that. So that makes it's always within. It's not, you're not going to find it from anyone else. You may be influenced, and loving people may lend their hand and their love and their support, but it's something you have got to go through yourself. This is a very individual, beautiful journey for each person. Everybody has a story. So that's what this is what I picked up from my life, from the older people I've known, from what I felt. And so anything that deviates from that, I'm curious about and maybe skeptical. People need to really start going within a little more and realizing they have everything they need.
Well, that it's the deviation that people are fearful about, because the deviation, it means that there's a process.
Yeah.
People need to realize that life itself is a process, and it's not going to always be hunky dory, but at the same time, it's your mindset that handles it or not. It's how you.
That's what intelligence is exactly. And I know you from the military, a lot of these military men and women, I mean, you know this, you have to think on your feet in business, Murphy's Law. I mean, things are always going to go wrong, things are what we perceive as wrong, but it might actually be a door that opens that was really better. We just couldn't see it then. You have to move with the flow. You really have got to be flexible, and that is not easy. That is not.
But even when you say that, here's what I see. This might agree with me or not. I see that the path of least resistance. We say go inside for somebody that's intuitive like you and me and others that we know. Sometimes it's easier to go inside because we've been there. We understand that process. Right. But the path of least resistance, a lot of people that I meet, unfortunately, don't want to go there. It's almost like they're scared of maybe what they're going to find out, or they're uncomfortable with that. And
no, I think you're right, John. And fear is a hard thing to tackle for some. There's no doubt about it, and we all know what that's like. So I understand, and it's sad because if they open the door and just put that fear aside, they would realize all that light and all the new things that you're going to find. And your whole life is going to be full of opening that door that you're afraid to open. And then you get to the next precipice. It's always like that.
And that's what you
I get out of my writings. Yeah, it's constant, it's a beautiful thing too.
But once you go there, and I'm not going to easier. I don't know. But once you go there, I'll share a little story with you. I remember
it takes courage too.
I remember, dealing with a brain injury, and this is
I-
this is going to support, I think, what you say, and I remember insomnia was part of that, and I remember my therapist told me next time that happens, turn on the light, go into the mirror and look at that person and tell that person how much you appreciate them. Of course, I had never done that my entire life. And
Right.
so I did that night, that same night. Insomnia is part of a brain injury. But so the first time I did it was like, hey, man, I love you. And then I tried to get back to sleep. But as I started to do more and more of it,
Uh-huh.
it became easier. And then I actually started to believe it. Because
Right.
here I was in my 50s. I had never looked at that guy in the mirror and
Yeah.
ever felt that way about him. And you said this earlier in the conversation, Tommie, about love, self-love, and forgiveness. And I think that's what people need to realize, that if they can appreciate themselves first,
Absolutely.
and then they
And that's
can,
well said. That's a neat story, John. And you're right.
yeah, forgive themselves. And then it just gets, I don't think it gets any easier, but it
Right.
gets, somebody said one time, it
Because
doesn't,
the bearing of that weight is lighter. That's for sure. And
it
you do
does.
evolve that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this guy that lost his son in combat said, John, I live my life 5 minutes at a time.
Oh,
It doesn't get any easier as time goes on. It just gets different.
sure. That's true.
So let's shift gears for a second, Tommie. Tell us about, we're not joking here, right? Tell us about what it's like to be a CEO and a vice president
Mhm.
of so many companies that do so many cool things. How does that work? What do you do? How do you get that done?
Well, I do have to put the accolades definitely go to my husband, Paul Thomas Baskis, who's just brilliant scientist, physicist, and inventor of so many 60 plus national and international patents that we have, and many more coming. So I wanted to say that quickly because he's at the core of all of these businesses, even before I met Paul. He's quite a bit older than me and has been doing this for definitely 30 plus years. We had a lot in common when we met. Of course, I run my own businesses too, and it keeps me very busy, but that was a little bit natural to me because I was already running my businesses, at least the art business, at an early age, because I've been painting and writing my whole life, basically. I mean, in nursery school, they knew I didn't like to sleep. I always had this anxiety that I was going to miss something in life. So I was the one that they would not make take a nap. They would let me paint or draw quietly. So I've been very busy since I was young, very energetic. But it's a wonderful experience. I'm very good with a lot of scientific, conceptual things. So I fit into the position I have very well, and I was very disciplined. I work very, very hard, and spent quite a bit of time going to meetings and learning a lot of things during the years that I have been doing this, which is definitely over 15 years, quite a long time. I'm very honored to be a part of something that I believe is very good for the world. These technologies are wonderful. They mimic natural biological processes that have happened for, millions of years. It's very interesting to be able to take a lot of waste, a lot of natural things, and transform them into energy for the world and other valuable components. So there's so much to go into. It would take forever, but these are great patented technologies that we have. And we're very fortunate to have many great colleagues that we're working with and contracts that we have. So it's been an interesting ride, and many good things are coming. That's all I can say. There's a lot I cannot speak of because of NDAs, but we have a lot of good things in the process and that are coming up that deal with coal to oil, plastic to oil conversion, all types of wonderful things. The wastewater industry, everything's moving forward. The extraction, distillation. We have mining patents that are coming on board. So it's a wonderful. does take up a lot of time, but I'm used to it, so it's balanced. I've learned how to balance the things that we have going on and find time for my also my paintings, my writings, which I'm working on a new book that is going to be published. There are 3 volumes to that of the abandoned story that deals with the state of Kentucky. So I'm very busy doing that also. But right now, what we're doing a lot of lab work for some really large companies, and we're about ready to wrap that up with some experiments that we're doing that deal with cold transformation, dealing with oils and things like that, gases.
Well, it
So
sounds, it sounds very fascinating. Energy's been on the minds
very
of everybody these days. And of course we don't want to, but I think that it is fascinating anytime you can take waste and do something that's beneficial with it. I mean, that's just it in the simplistic terms, but I don't even know anything about, I know the periodic chart, of elements, but a couple chemical courses, that I took when I was in school, but that's, but that's good. And that's great work. And, you've said some things here that, in a capsule, we're talking about respect. We're talking about discipline, energy,
Yes.
creative energy. We're talking about work ethic. We're talking about balance, all of these things that help us to become successful in what it is we do, whatever it is that we do. And those are important. Let me ask you this. What do you think, or how do you, in your own opinion or words or wisdom that you've gained here, Tommie, how do you think men can improve? Because, I hear it more and more from a lot of people that men, more than ever these days, just seem to be struggling. And, how do you think men can improve that?
Let's see. Well, I think that we need to live kind of by some simple rules that we were speaking of earlier, that I believe everybody on this planet is very important, women and men, children, everybody. So I think that people need to not fall into a narrative that you're supposed to be this way or that way. But I think that men have their set of gifts that make them what they are. And I believe that and the men I write about in my stories and the men that influence me, the noble type of man to me is one that is courageous. You're able to admit your faults and work on those, just like a woman needs to do. You need to strive for something better. I believe men are nurturing like women too, but they're the protectors. And I've always seen it that way. I write a lot about men that way. And I don't think that should be something to be ashamed of or to made to be that way. I'm not speaking of like protector, like you're walking around 24/7 with, a rifle or a gun or this and that. But men are protectors of that domain, of that family unit that we speak of, that singularity there. And women too are protectors of those children, if you have children, or of that relationship that you have. I think that men, and when I speak of men, it's hard for me to answer this kind of, John, because I think of women as being equally as strong but different. Women, and the way I see my power is that I have a strength and a discipline where I try to better myself. And when I fall short of that, or I do something that is hurtful, or what I consider to be not right, or something that's not correct, I apologize immediately for that. And I think men growing up, especially young men, they need to realize that too. If you've done something wrong, you apologize, you correct that, you become better, because it's not really like a competition, but you need to learn to strive for the most noble self that you can be in this world, so you can give back to others, and you've got to do that for yourself too. So I find that in this day and age, and this is what I was talking about with social media and stuff, where people can just write you or text you, which is not my favorite way of communicating. I like to see someone. I like to experience that personal intimacy where I can look in someone's eyes and I'm interacting with them, because I watch that. That's why I love going to meetings. I love watching people taking that in and feeling things. That's part of my intuitive power that I have. I'm able to assess quite a bit. I think young people have become, they lack courage. They aren't able to speak to someone in person, but they can sit behind a computer or text someone and state something that sounds really bold or not take responsibility. And I think it gets down to that. You have to take responsibility for your actions, even if it's an inaction, because everything comes with consequences. And I don't know if people are really learning this at home growing up. And you see this in relationships as we get older, whether it's with intimate ones or on a personal level or business level. But when someone can't really give the best of themselves and be totally honest and transparent, there's an issue, and that needs to be dealt with, with that person. If you're not doing that, I hate to say it, but you're not a courageous person. You're letting yourself down, you're letting someone else down. And so my advice to men and women, and actually I've had some pretty tough experiences the past few years. I mean, we all do, but for me, speaking of this in business and on a personal level, well, where I've had to deal with very narcissistic people and they don't ever apologize. And I mean, even covert narcissists, they're very tricky, very manipulating, very self-serving. And these are very difficult things sometimes to maneuver around, especially if you're a loving, caring person and you are trying to give someone the benefit of the doubt and you trust what they're telling you, that they love and care for you, they want to be there. And some people they're just not good people, but it's okay. Admit, I don't care if you're a 40-year-old man or 50-year-old man or 20-year-old man or woman, you need to come to terms with this realistically within you and say, this is not right. I'm doing myself a disservice by not facing my fears, by not facing my addictions, by not facing the things that are stumbling blocks that are keeping me from being the best, most noble version of myself I can be. And if you don't say you're sorry to yourself and forgive yourself, and if you talk to your creator, your higher power, talk to your grandparents, your grandma will put you right, I guarantee it. You need to get yourself right. You need to realize this, because you're not really going to evolve as a human, and you're going to have a lot of other problems for this. And I know we all know this. I've gone through the same thing, and I feel really bad when I hurt somebody, or I've hurt myself and somebody else. You've got to say you're sorry and say, none of us are perfect. But if you're doing this over and over again and committing the same mistake over and over again, you either have a serious mental issue or you are really a manipulating person who does not want to become better. So those toxic people, you've really got to be strong and leave them alone. Just leave them be, because it is going to be up to them to change. But I really think people have got to take the responsibility. That's the word I've always told myself that. My self-talk growing up, Tommie, you're responsible. I had to pay for things when I grew up. Things were tough, we had tough times. I had to work really hard at an early age. There was no question. I never was a victim. Never said I was a victim or complained about it. I just did it because I wanted something better. And I thought that's how most people thought. The people I grew up with, they worked hard for what they wanted. They took responsibility. And I think a lot of narrative today is to make everyone feel like you need a safe space, or you need to, claim you're a victim. No, we're not victims. We're sovereign beings with our own unique DNA from our creator. If you don't understand the power of that, you need to really go sit in a room for a while and think about that. That's absolutely one of the most impressive things. That's why I always tell young people, you need to understand the gravity of what that means. So yeah. I don't know if that helps or not, but I mean, that's
no. There's a lot to digest there.
They want to put the responsibility off on someone else. You just need to admit, look, I'm budging up here. I'm not really doing the best I can do. I'm lying to this person, to that. I'm lying to myself. And a lot of times you wonder, are they even seeing this? Either you're manipulating and you do see it, or you have a lot of fear and you don't want to deal with it. I understand it's difficult, but you're never going to be a really disciplined, strong person And you're really not going to be fully happy or loved if you don't deal with those demons. You don't
That's true. You know,
know what to do.
that could be a whole other episode, the concept of victimology, being a victim,
Absolutely.
and how not healthy it is. And here, you're not old, Tommie, but you are definitely an old soul, because you have given a lot of wisdom here. Everyone is important, including
absolutely.
you listening. Think for yourself.
Yeah.
Utilize your own gifts. Admit your faults. Seek self-improvement. Demonstrate courage, legitimate courage. Take responsibility for your mistakes. Accept yourself if necessary. Make a change for a better life. I mean, that is like a laundry list of practices and behaviors that if we did more of them, could you imagine the Tommie Baskis rules of living? We literally
hard work
anyhow.
And influence me. And
Oh my gosh.
All those things are important. And I know you know all of these. If you don't accept these things and you don't work through these things, that's why you keep having to go through the same episodes. It is kind of weird about the karma. I know that I hate using words that are bandied around so much, but really, karma is a hard writing, you know what. I'm not going to say this word on here, but you will experience these same type of episodes in your life until you deal with that and you open the door and you go through it. Because it's kind of like life is like you're a person walking, kind of like the salmon that swims upstream. You have to go through this. You can lie all you want, tell yourself this and not deal with that and hide it under the bed, but it never goes away until you deal with this. And I think, John, a lot of people are very afraid to do that for themselves. They are afraid of what they will find. And I don't know why. We all make mistakes. We all do that. It's right there in your hands at this moment to change your way of thinking. And it's never too late. And that is true. And I've always learned that from older people. And thank goodness for that. I've had to reassess and change and think about, myself, and I'm always learning and eager to do so. I want to be the best I can be while I live, and none of us know how long that we have, but you want to be the best you can be for yourself and for others. And to really, to be that way is to really experience joy too. I think when you don't do that and you aren't taking all of this in, all of this awareness and what's in front of you, and really just experience all of those moments in that way, openly and with a full heart, how do you really get the most out of life? I mean, can you really say you're living? You're living like I feel God intended us to live, unless you really do that. That is so true, Tommie. You just can't have the positive without the negative. So I think that people need to not concentrate too on so much of the narrative that's put out to them through the information streams, and really, without throwing in another cliche, but sort of like look at that glass is mostly half full. It's not empty. There's so much more, and there's so much more than that. You need to really understand what your gifts are and go out and just live and enjoy. Be joyful, because there are people, and this, being in the military, that aren't able to live. So live for them. Live for those people in your family that you love that aren't here anymore. Live so maybe they can see through your eyes and enjoy every moment you have, because that's really all that we do have. And no one is going to be thinking about all of this stuff that I call it noise. I know politics and all of this is important, and history, and that's another conversation for another time, but none of this will matter in the end. People really need to go with it and start thinking about things. That is definitely a fact, that none of it, there's more important things in life than what we. Everything. Love is everything. Do everything with a loving heart. Everything that you do in business, people, every little experience. That's what I mean. So much. Yeah. There's out of this life as you can. Be that. See that. Because so much more to life than what we're told sometimes. But that's your story. Our hour is coming to a close here. Tommie, how can people find out more about
Duskflyer Vision Art and Productions, but also Angel Blue Perfume. How can they find out more about you?
Yeah, and
what it is?
that's another interesting thing. I love Angel Blue Perfume. It is a niche market, and it's Victorian inspired perfume, the way they used to make perfume. So I extract natural, oils from leaf, wood, spices, berries, things like that, like they used to do in the old days, and do an extraction process with a polar solvent extraction process that we have, and create really beautiful, sensuous scents that people can enjoy, that's healthy for the environment and healthy for your skin. So it's artistic creation of mine. But you can go to angelblueperfume.com for the Victorian inspired story on those scents, and duskflyer.com, and I think I gave you the links to those.
Yeah, we'll post those.
Yeah, and that embodies my art, my writings, books, some of the other things about those creations on that side. So very proud of the work I do, work very hard at it. I'm glad of my published works, and I'm writing all the time. And like I said, working on 3 volumes for Kentucky. I've got a lot of other states in the Midwest I'll be working on too. But I believe it's very important, John, to continue that story of the abandoned places and the historic towns, because those stories become lost when the older generation dies off and it's not kept. So I think documenting these places is very, very important. And I don't want that story to die. So I'm just doing my little part, trying to bring awareness to those forgotten stories and abandoned places and towns.
That's fantastic, Tommie. I just wanted to, thank you very much for being on this episode of W.E.L.L.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
I wish you the best, and it's not over yet. We'll have to come back for another conversation. Tell Paul and all the things that he's doing. We wish him the best, and we know that whatever it is he's up to, that it's going to make a huge difference in the world, because he's also with a difference maker. And there you have Tommie Flannery Baskis, the old soul, right? who has a lot of good things going on. And it's nice knowing that you're around, because with you and Paul doing the things that y'all are doing, I know the world's in a better place.
Well, and you too, John, you're bringing a lot of awareness with the wonderful guests that you have on. I do listen to those interviews, and what you do is phenomenal and wonderful too, and letting people have their voice. And your
Thank you for that.
You've said a lot of wonderful things. So
thank you for those who are listening, because without the listeners, we can't tell our stories. And
that's right. And they have their stories. So I hope everybody's encouraged to do that and live their story and share it. Well, thank you, John.
Thank you, Tommie. We'll see you. We'll talk to you again, and I'll let you go. And thank you for being here again. And thank you. A lot of good wisdom here. I can't wait for this one to hit the airwaves. You're gonna change some lives with those philosophies. Thank you.
Well, thank you too, John. I appreciate it. You have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to another episode of W.E.L.L. Without you, we don't exist. There is no show. We hope the men who joined us today learned some valuable tips to improve and not be ashamed to use them. Be the change, men. Set the example. Keep going. And for the women leaders out there, keep creating and keep helping us men to become even better men, more effective leaders. Thank you. Until next time, stay safe, be well, and lead.